Hey guys, what is up? Now, a viewer requested that I talk a little bit about binaural beats, and I thought that would be a great topic for a next video. So, I'll give you a heads up here at the beginning. At the end of this video, I'm actually going to do an experiment where I try to show you how binaural beats work. And I've never done this before, so hopefully this works. But that being said, at least the end of this video will be best listened to through stereo headphones so that you can get the full effect of exactly how this phenomenon or this technology works. All right, so in a nutshell, binaural beats, they are a result of your brain expecting to hear the same sound from both ears. You know, slightly different perspective, slightly different position, but your brain is expecting to hear the same sound with both ears. And typically that's the way it is. So what happens when you are hearing a different sound in each ear, so let's say you put a 193 hertz sound, tone in one ear and you put a 197 hertz tone in your other ear, is your brain tries to compensate for the difference in those two signals. And the end result is that your brain invents a sound that doesn't exist. And it's the difference between those two tones. So if you've got 193 hertz in your left ear and 197 in your right ear, the sound that you actually hear that your brain generates is a 4 hertz signal to bridge that gap between the two tones. And what it sounds like is it sounds like a warbling, modulating, wah, 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 wah type tone. So that's interesting enough on its own that your brain does that. But what's more interesting is that your brainwave frequencies actually fall into these various ranges as well. So depending on your state of mind, whether you're in deep sleep or dreaming or awake or meditating or actively concentrating intensely, your brain waves will be functioning at these various frequencies. And what they found is that if you are listening to a specific frequency, so let's say you pick a 4 hertz frequency, which is in the theta range and is good for bordering on sleep, deep meditation, you can listen to and focus on that sound, and it will actually help you bring your brainwave frequency down in line with that frequency. Making meditation faster and more effective and easier to maintain for a longer period of time, especially for people who are beginning and haven't done a lot of this in the past. It's a great training type tool for your brain. In fact, I've heard the word brainwave entrainment thrown out quite a bit, and I believe that that's what this is referring to. So it works really well for meditation. It works really well to get to those really low frequency states where you can practice out-of-body type travel or out-of-body induction. It also works on the opposite end of the spectrum. So once you get in the beta and the gamma range, that would be the brainwave frequencies that are common with really intense concentration, problem solving, things like that. And so just like listening to those lower frequencies can help you train your brain down into those frequencies, listening to those higher frequencies can actually help you bring your brainwave state up into those frequencies and help you function at those levels more effectively. All right, so there are a lot of different flavors and products out there that use binaural beats. So first, there is just plain binaural beats, and there's a lot of this out there. There's a lot of these on YouTube. You got to actually be careful about the ones you find on YouTube, because what I've found is that I think some people don't actually know the way binaural beats work, and they're going for this warbling modulating sound, but the warbling sound is actually built into their audio rather than playing a distinct tone in each ear. So I've ran across several of those on YouTube where they're not really binaural beats, they just sound like they are, but you listen to it in one ear and you'll still hear the warbling. And that's a pretty good indication that that's not a binaural beat. The warbling and that modulating sound is actually built into the audio. And what you want is you want your brain to be the thing that creates that modulation. So just something to be aware of if you're looking these up on YouTube. There's a lot of Android, I imagine iOS apps as well that do this. My personal favorite one is called Beat Player, and it was cheap. I think it was a couple of bucks, but I really like it because it allows you to change the frequency. It allows you to change the pitch of the frequency. It comes with a number of presets and also lets you create your own presets so that you can have certain frequencies that go along with certain songs or meditations or whatever. And it also lets you create a time lapse where you can have the frequency change over time. So you can start out with like a frequency that's common to waking life that slowly drifts down into the theta range to help you slowly make that transition as you're doing, meditative type practices. So Beat Player is what I personally use, and I'm sure there's 100 others out there that are just as good and just as functional. But that's the one I've got experience with. Other products out there, Hemi-Sync, in case you've heard of that. I'll share a story that I was actually told by the bus driver who took us up to the Monroe Institute. I spent a week at the Monroe Institute, and the bus driver who works there, his name is Mike, and he's worked there for decades and knew Bob Monroe well. And as he was driving us up in this bus to the Monroe Institute after he picked us up from the airport, he told us how basically how Hemi-Sync was discovered or invented or first conceptualized. Bob Monroe was a pilot, and he observed over the years that when you've got two engines, two plane engines, one on each side of the plane, and they're tuned differently, you've got one engine that's making one tone, and you've got the other engine making a slightly different tone because they're just tuned slightly differently. And the end result was that you would actually hear these binaural beats, these warbling sounds sitting in the cockpit. And the end result was that they had pilots that were falling asleep at the wheel. And Bob looked at that and said, that's a really interesting phenomenon. You've got two distinct tones, create this warbling sound, and the end result is that you fall asleep. And if you tune the engines so that they're the same and you don't get the warbling sound, you don't have that same problem. So he took that idea and said, I can do something with this sound, and I can affect people's consciousness state with this sound. So initially he used these sounds in his, he created a laboratory. He was the owner of a couple of radio stations, I believe. So he had a lot of audio technology available to him. And he would take these sounds, and originally he wanted to use them to try to see if he could help people learn while they were sleeping. Now, I don't know how far that went or how that actually took off. But eventually this evolved into the sounds that he used to assist people in achieving out-of-body states. And that has later become known as Hemi-Sync. So Hemi-Sync uses binaural beats, and the difference between these is really, between Hemi-Sync and plain binaural beats, is really just the production that's put into them, at least from what I can tell. With Hemi-Sync, they take binaural beats, they've got those in the background. On top of those, they usually put pink or white noise, just some basically static that helps cover up the sounds, makes it more it makes it easier to listen to for a long period of time. And then on top of that, they'll have Bob talking, and he'll walk you through guided meditations and exercises. And then they've also branched out, and they've got a number of music CDs where they've got binaural beats that are playing as the root note of these various songs. And it makes it really difficult to actually hear that warbling sound, and it makes it much, much easier to just listen to these tones for hours on end, because it sounds like you're listening to music when really your subconscious or your brain is hearing these warbling sounds. So that's the idea behind those. Much easier to listen to for a longer period of time, and great for the guided meditations that Bob provides in his earlier Hemi-Sync CDs. And then one more I will mention that I've had experience with is something that was produced by Graham Nichols. Graham Nichols is a experienced phase practitioner. He's written about going out of body. He's got a pretty good book out there. And he created an audio file that he calls infraliminal sound. And again, the base of this is binaural beats, but he went about it a little bit of a different way. I read an article about how he came up with this, and essentially he took sounds that reminded him of the sounds that he hears prior to going out of body. So sounds that reminded him of the induction process of this out of body state. And he took those sounds, and he tried to reproduce those so that he could listen to them, and that would remind him of what it felt like, what it sounded like to go through this out of body exit process, and it would essentially help him train for this. So the thing I really like about his is he's got the binaural beats in the bass in the background, but then he's also got some stereo phasing type sounds that really give you a sense of movement. And the reason I like that, and I've talked about this before, but imagined movement is very effective when you are trying to bring on the vibrational state when you're in that void type state. So when I'm practicing my imagined movement, I found that it's very effective to listen to these infraliminal sound this infraliminal sound file, and hearing this stereo swishing type rotating type sound going around my head, it makes it easy to imagine that I'm rotating in a circle or doing loops or something like that. as I listen to these sounds. So it's helpful for these creative visualizations that help prepare me for my out of body attempts. But aside from that, it's just binaural beats. Binaural beats alone, I just find they're really good for short meditative periods, but it's not something you could just listen to for hours. I think I'd get a headache just listening to that constant warbling in my ears. All right, so that's basically how they work. I have heard a number of people on YouTube say that these have been really effective in helping them get out of body. And I think that's great. I would say definitely give it a try and see if they work for you. What I've found personally is that the more I disconnect from my physical senses, so my hearing, my sight, my sense of touch, and all of these things as I'm putting my body to sleep, really the better chance I have of having a successful exit. And listening to something, music, binaural beats, anything, listening to anything, in fact, anything aside from just having earplugs in my ears, really just it seems to hold me and keep me in the physical and prevents me from getting out. So personally, what I found is that these are really great for meditation. They're really great for relaxation prior to an out of body attempt. So I might listen to them for 15, 20 minutes before I go to bed to really just get myself in the right state of mind and relax myself. And that will speed up the process of putting my body to sleep and to getting out of body. Um, but personally, I can't actually listen to audio files or any sort of audio sounds and ever have any sort of success. And that's probably just because I have spent so many years with just earplugs in my ears and getting used to not hearing anything, that hearing sound in my ears while I'm going into those states just holds me in the physical and distracts me from my progress. But being that there are a whole lot of people who have stated that these have been helpful for them and stated that these have helped them induce that out-of-body state, definitely give these a try. All right, so now for the experimental part of this. In your left ear, you should now hear a 193 hertz signal. And now in your right ear, I'll turn the left one off. In your right ear, this is a 197 hertz signal. So now what you'll hear is that both of these are just plain signals, no modulation, no warbling at all, just a plain pure tone in your left ear and then in your right ear. All right, so now this is what they sound like when you put them together. And if this works how I'm hoping this works, you now hear a 4 hertz modulation, warbling, wah, wah, wah sound in your head. All right, so then Hemi-Sync, what they do is they take pink or white noise, they layer that on top of it, at least for the creative visualization, the guided meditations that Bob does. So you'll hear pink noise on top of that. It helps cover it up a little bit. It makes it a little bit easier to listen to for a long period of time. And then if you go further into what Hemi-Sync does, here's an example. They add music on top of that, and it makes it much easier to just listen to that for a long period of time and really stay focused, so that these frequencies can help really modify your brainwave frequencies and get you to the desired state. All right, so hopefully that all worked. Let me know if you've got any questions, and I would be happy to answer whatever I can. Also, feel free to correct me if I missed anything or if I misstated anything here. But that is Binaural Beats in a nutshell, and I highly recommend them, especially for meditation. They make a really huge difference in the speed of my progress. Also, give them a try for out-of-body practice, and let me know how that goes. I'd love to hear. I will talk to you guys soon. Have a good one.